Hello everybody, and welcome back to Forever Conscious Research channel. Hope you're doing well today. Of course, my camera isn't working, so I just have to restart it really quickly and then we'll get going. There we go. Whoa. Okay. Anyways, good to see you all. Hope you're doing well out there. So, this near-death experience is jam-packed with some revealing things, and it'll blow your mind. Basically, Tony is a doctor, was a doctor when this happened, gets struck by lightning, his body dematerializes in front of him, and he ends up turning into this incredible concert pianist afterwards. And again, if for some reason, like anytime I do commentary on this, if Tony or any of his friends or family run across this, it's just me analyzing what you're saying. There's no, I think he's a very good man. He's doing what he's doing and living his life, okay? And he happened to receive what many would consider a gift with his near-death experience, which does happen from time to time. But what you're about to hear is nothing short of incredible. So I'll be doing a commentary on it. I'll be pausing it briefly. Unfortunately, due to copyright, I cannot play you his music. So afterwards, I would suggest looking him up. I'll also leave a link to the part where he does play music, which is the last segment of the interview. So I will be sure to pop that up in the chat as well as the description, so you guys can go check him out for yourself. And of course, you could do a search for him and look at all his other stuff. Incredible. All right, so without any further ado, let's get rolling with Tony's near-death experience. I mean, just wait till you hear this one. All right, let's roll.
Hello, welcome to Inspirational Transformational TV show. Amy Whitney here today with very special guest Dr. Tony Cicoria. When I met Dr. Cicoria, two words continually went through my mind, and they were divine intervention. Dr. Cicoria's story is one of a man with a passion, and he is sharing his passion, his music, with the world. You'll have a chance later in the interview to hear a piece of his music, and the beauty is amazing. The story of how this music comes to Dr. Cicoria through an accident and a near-death experience is an incredible tale in itself.
Okay, first off, with anything in life, I don't believe in accidents, but in this one, there's no way it's an accident, and you will see soon. So right out the gate there, that is completely wrong, and you'll see.
It's absolute divine intervention. Enjoy. Dr. Tony Cicoria, thank you so much for joining Inspirational Transformational TV show.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. What I'd like to start with is basically going back pre the age of 42. You don't have to start at birth or anything, but just tell us a little bit about your life, what you do, a little bit of the Dr. Cicoria story.
Okay. I'll start from my college years. I went to the Citadel, which was a military school in South Carolina, and I studied biology. I went, in my last year, I got interested in the basic sciences and studied at Woods Hole Lab in Massachusetts. and was sure that I wanted to be a scientist. So I applied to graduate school and got my PhD in physiology and in an area of cellular biophysics. And then when I finished, I really thought that wasn't the end for me, and I decided that I was going to go to medical school as well. So right after I finished my PhD, I just continued right into medicine, and then decided to go into orthopedic surgery. And I spent another 6 years doing that. So I came out of all of that training in my mid-30s, and I came to Oneonta, New York, because it was close to my family and my wife's family, and so it seemed like a good place to start. And then I worked, that was in 1988 that I began, and I was going on a very academic road in terms of medicine. I was publishing a lot of scientific articles. I was involved in scientific meetings. Actually, I was the chairman of a meeting that was a national meeting in controversies in spine surgery. And I had actually been selected by Hanson Yuan in Syracuse to be his replacement.
Okay, now I'm just pausing here because I have to say something once in a while to avoid possible copyright things.
So I was going down that academic road, and my life was very busy that way. And I was very happy with where that was all going. And it wasn't until when I was 42, it's in 1994, that things really started to change. Now, prior to that, I'd had 3 children, and they were born in 88, 87, and 90. So they're pretty young. And I was working just ridiculous hours at the time. But that's kind of par for the course. And then, so my life was pretty much like that up until I got to the age of 42, when things started to change.
And so what happened at the age of 42 that was a pivotal moment for you?
When in August of 94, my wife's family had a huge family reunion. We have this huge birthday party, and everybody is there. There's probably 18 or 20 people who were at this party, and I was outside barbecuing, and I wasn't paying attention to the weather, and I went over to call my mom. So there's a payphone attached to this building, and we're at a pavilion in a place called Athens, New York, which is just below Albany, and the name of the grounds is Sleepy Hollow Lake.
Okay, so you have Sleepy Hollow, you have Athens. Okay, just Sleepy Hollow is hilarious, and he adds to it, which is funny. So those are a few things right there.
So it's kind of an ominous sort of a title to begin with. I'm waiting for Ichabod Crane to come riding out without his head. But at any rate, so I'm there, and I go to talk to my mom on the phone, and I call her, and the phone rings and rings, nobody answers, and I was just getting ready to hang up the phone, and all of a sudden the building that I was standing next to and on the payphone get struck by lightning. I remember seeing this big flash of light come out of the phone and hit me in the face. And when it did, it was like being kicked by a horse. I just took off backwards, flying backwards. And suddenly, as I was going backwards, I stopped going backwards, and I was moving forwards. And I remember standing there, and I was just utterly confused, because there was never a break in consciousness. I was aware of every single millisecond of what had happened. And I remember standing there saying, well, I know I got hit by lightning. I saw that. I know I got thrown backwards. And then I didn't go backwards. I went forwards. And I remember thinking, this is very, very strange. And then I was trying to make sense of it.
Okay, so pretty standard, no break in consciousness. This is, typical in an NDE, but a pattern nonetheless, but something you'll see regularly stated by people.
I'm looking at the phone, it's dangling there, and right about that time, my mother-in-law at the time, standing at the top of the stairs, and she starts screaming at the top of her lungs, and she's running right at me down the stairs. So I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs, and here comes this woman just screaming, and she's running right at me, and I feel like a deer in the headlights. And I'm like, uh-oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And she ran right by me. And as she ran by, I turned to see where she was going, and I'm over on the ground. And at this, it's like, I said, actually what I said was, oh shit, I'm dead. and I was absolutely dumbfounded, because there was never a break in consciousness. There was never a signal that I had left my body. And so all of a sudden I'm like, wow. And as it turns out, there was a nurse who was waiting to use the phone in the middle of nowhere.
Now see, come on, okay? A nurse in the middle of nowhere just happened to be there when all this happened, okay?
And she drops down to start doing CPR on me. But I'm standing there, and I'm trying to get somebody's attention, and I'm yelling, and I'm going, hello, and I could see them, I could hear them. They couldn't see or hear me.
Part 2's coming.
And so I was like, but it was very dispassionate. There was no emotion associated with it at all.
Okay. Now this, when I hear this in near-death experiences, we've talked about this before. He didn't have emotion, okay? He's just neutral, okay? The love, or anger, or whatever. You pick any emotion. He's saying no emotion, all right? So right now, he is in an uninterrupted state. He is not corrupted yet by the force. Granted, the whole damn thing is rooted in corruption, in my opinion. But when I find near-death experiences like this, I really try to concentrate on this. The problem is that you don't necessarily always get that, because sometimes, actually most of the time, you'll see people go boom right to interference, where the dead loved one pops up, or someone they perceive as a religious figure like Jesus or whoever, okay, or a pet. Some entity, something initiates the contact, and the emotions come with that. There's like a streamline of there's people don't have what he has most of the time, because it's immediately right to the love or this, that, or if they do have it, it's just not discussed, because let's call it what it is. These experiences are extremely, they're just mega experiences where they are essentially overwhelmed with everything. It's just, so they might not necessarily recall that moment that he's speaking of. And what you're going to see is the transition over to the interference. Okay? So remember, no emotion, and it all changes.
So when you say you were standing there, could you look down at your physical body standing there as well as laying on the ground?
Yeah, at that time I could.
Right.
I could, I still had what I thought was a normal shape, and I actually still had all the clothes on that the guy on the ground had on.
Wow.
Which was pretty weird. And so, but as I'm watching them, I think, well, I guess there's no point in hanging around here because they can't see me, they can't hear me, and I'm dead. So I thought, well, I just turned to leave, and I didn't know where I was going, but I started to walk up the stairs, and in that pavilion, there's a set of stairs that goes this way, and then it goes back, and you go into this big room. So as I'm going up the stairs, I'm noticing that my legs are dissolving, and I'm looking down, going, "This is really something," and my shape has suddenly dematerialized.
So that's where this is starting to shift. Okay, he's seeing his body dematerialize in front of him. So
I get to the top of the stairs, and now I'm mostly a ball of energy of some sort, and I pass through the wall, and now I'm in the big room with the family, and I see my kids, and they're my ex is painting faces, and everybody's having a grand old time. And I floated diagonally through the room, and I just had the realization that they'll all be fine.
Okay. I've seen this a lot in near-death experiences. Well, I can't say a lot, but enough, okay? Where they have this inner sense that the family will be okay. All right. Now, you would expect emotion, right? They'll be okay. They'll be all right. So right now, he's still kind of in this phase where I will say, and obviously everyone has the right to their opinion on what they feel is going on. I feel that right now, Tony is in his truest essence possible right at this moment. And a little bit before, obviously, since we started talking about this. So he's in his organic, true essence self as much as possible right here. Uncorrupted.
But it was very dispassionate. It was very interesting to me because...
Very dispassionate.
I was pure thought.
Wow.
There was no emotion associated with it. It was just...
No emotion associated with it. So important here.
I was pure thought energy. And as I got out of that building, and I don't know why I was going diagonally, but that's the way I was going. When I got outside the building, and suddenly I was wrapped in this bluish white light.
Here we go. Here we go.
And the closest thing that I remember trying to examine it and saying, what is this, and what is it like that I've experienced on Earth? And the closest thing I could come to was, if you've ever been swimming underwater in really blue water and the light from the sun was penetrating through it, that's what it was like. It has very shimmery bluish white light. But as soon as that happened, I suddenly became aware of the feeling of absolute love and absolute peace. You know, people talk about, you know, absolute zero, which is the temperature that nothing moves at. And that's the closest thing I could come to as I'm thinking about what I'm experiencing.
Rewind that.
Love and absolute peace. You know, people talk about, you know, absolute zero, which is the temperature that nothing moves at. And that's the closest thing I could come to as I'm thinking about what I'm experiencing. And it was like falling into a river of pure positive energy.
Okay, so he is just becoming enveloped with this positivity, this loving energy. He's getting corrupted by outside forces. And all of a sudden, emotions are there. So he has no emotion for his family. They'll be okay. But all of a sudden, the blue light pops up. This pops up, and then all of a sudden, he's just, you know, peace and love, everything's great, new age, man. I mean, I'm just making some fun with it, obviously. But let's just call it what it is, right? He's switched over to and being opened up to manipulation from outside forces and going along with it.
And it was, there's nothing that I've ever experienced in this world that's even close to that. So in the whole time, I'm analyzing everything that's happening because my mind is racing. And so that, you know, that's like, you know, that realization that the consciousness went with me and that I'm who I am always was a huge realization. And so I'm thinking about what's happening. I have a very brief life review. You know, it's kind of the high points and low points of my life just kind of whiz by. And I'm just taking it all in. And I'm feeling this absolute love and the most amazing feeling I've ever experienced in my life as I thought of it.
Most amazing experience he's ever experienced in his life. How often do we hear that? It's the most love they've ever felt all the time. It's for the positive ones, all right? For the positive NDEs. This is just par for the course. Par for the course. But he's on a one-way ticket with corrupted outside forces that are leading him on. And wait till you see where this all goes.
And at that point, I was so excited to be going someplace, and I could feel that I was going. There was a sense of speed and direction to wherever I was going. It wasn't getting warmer, so I thought, okay, I'm safe. But it was clearly a direction. And I became so excited about where I was headed. And then all of a sudden, bam, I was back. And I remember screaming in my head, please don't make me do this. I don't want to go back. And
what else is new? How often do we hear this? I swear, the percentages have to be upwards of 98, 99% of people who don't want to come back, but they end up coming back. There are exceptions. We do see it where people, you know, say they want to come back, that they feel that they have unfinished business of their own, and it's like they are hell-bent on saying that. So there's definitely a slight percentage that do want to come back. Can we attribute that all the time to outside influence? The problem is there's really not a lot of people who say that they, right from the get-go of their near-death experience testimonial, that they did want to come back. But it does happen. But par for the course, he's enjoying himself out there, and he doesn't want to go back. Well, let's see.
But it's too bad. It's like when you're back, and I remembered, I went from absolute bliss to misery.
It's another one. We hear that all the time. Absolute love and bliss and everything's great to absolute misery because they're back in that body. They have to start usually rehab sometime or some sort of physical therapy, or they're stuck in a hospital for days or weeks. They have to deal with nurses, all sorts of stuff.
In a millisecond. And now I'm stuck back in this body. There's this poor woman who's beating on my chest. I'm still unconscious, so I can't talk, I can't move, and I can't tell everybody, all right, I'm back, you can stop. And so I'm sitting there, and it hurt. Where the lightning hit me right in the left corner of the mouth, and it came out my left foot. And both of those places hurt like crazy. And I'm like, God, this is not for me. But it's like, too bad you're here.
Too bad you're here. What is this? Again, this is why the phrase Stockholm Syndrome on steroids applies to Earth. Because this is the complacency, it's the acceptance, it's the normalizing of things that are wrong or insane or, negative, whatever word you want to use.
And so, it took me several minutes to wake up. And when I did, I wanted to tell the girl who was doing all this CPR stuff that, thank you, I'm okay. But none of the circuits were working very well.
Right.
And I was having trouble focusing, there was trouble thinking. And my poor attempt at explaining myself came out as, it's okay, I'm a doctor. And she just looked at me and said, you weren't a minute ago. And I'm thinking, oh God, she must think I'm such a jerk. And at that point I realized I shouldn't say anything to anybody because I'm not well.
Yeah.
And I managed to get up, and I went upstairs to where the rest of the family was. And the whole episode apparently took about 15 minutes.
Really?
But in that 15 minutes, I made some huge realizations. And one of them was that when you leave your body, there's no bells and whistles. It's just you, and you don't even realize that you've left. And that was really hard. But the realization that the consciousness goes with you is a profound realization. Probably the biggest realization of all, and one of the things that makes me feel like I'm the luckiest man alive, is I know there's something else. I didn't see God, but I felt God.
Felt God. How often do we hear that? Felt God. It felt like Jesus. Felt, inner feeling. But remember to keep in mind, he is consenting the entire time with this experience. He did not tell that blue light to go pound sand. He embraced it and allowed it to continue. And this is where, again, we talk about consent and how it is everywhere in society, and it's a universal law. Okay? I don't think there are many, but I think consent is the king of universal laws. And he's allowed himself to proceed with this force.
I know that God exists, and I know that God is part of the fabric of everything.
That's another one. But, God is part of the fabric with everything, one with everything. Another common thing you'll hear in NDEs.
And that's pretty big stuff to walk away from, and a near-death experience, and an out-of-body experience with. I didn't get to see lost relatives and some of the things that other people see, but I didn't need to, because I felt very privileged to have what I did have. So, when the police came and they wanted to take me to the hospital, and I just said, what's the point? If you get struck by lightning, you're alive or you're dead. There's not much in between. And so I said, I would just rather go home. I'll have my doctor see me as soon as I get there. And so I called my cardiologist, my neurologist, and they checked everything, and they said, well, you're just lucky.
Master J, it's okay, I'm a doctor.
And it took me about a week to where I was back to normal.
Right.
And in that period of time, I felt like one of those old television sets, because it's long before cable vision, and we had to have a tuner in the television, and the tuners never worked well, so you always had to walk up and whack the television on the side of it.
I bet a bunch of us here remember that, right? And the funny thing is it worked every time.
To get it to work right.
Right.
And that's what my head felt like. I felt like, I could look at you, and I knew who you were. And I knew that I knew you and had known you for a long time. We worked together. Couldn't remember your name. But I knew that it was there. It's like, okay, I know it's in this drawer over here, but I can't get to it.
Yeah.
And we're all and so there were a lot of things like that, but it was mostly just the names of things. Functionally, I could do everything I did the day before. And so the only place that I really noticed a difference mentally was in being able to recall names of things and people. But within a week that went away. And then it was just, okay, it was an interesting life experience, and what did it mean?
That's the question.
Yeah, and that really was very difficult for me.
Very common that people will say, what is the meaning, that especially right after these things. Some people go into deep depressions and are very upset that they're back. I mean, there's support groups and all sorts of things, and a lot of it is rooted around the depression of not understanding what happened. And my heart goes out to these people who have these experiences. I know before I kind of knew all the stuff that I know today, had I had a near-death experience and came back, I can't imagine the weight that puts on somebody. But what almost always does happen eventually is, I'm not going to say always, but a lot, often, what will happen is they will change their whole life. A lot of times there's divorce involved because the spouse doesn't understand what's going, the transformation that they made. They're still trying to figure things out, etc., etc. Okay, let's continue.
I struggled from that moment on with, why am I here? And I tried to get books to read and tried to have some understanding of what this was all about, because it was, even to my meager understanding, it was too well planned to not have meaning.
So he acknowledges it's too well planned. Okay, his words.
It's like, okay, I get struck by lightning and I don't take a direct hit. It goes through the building, so it loses some of its current, enough to kill me, but not enough to fry me. There's a nurse waiting to use the phone. I mean, please. I mean, it's just too well orchestrated.
That's it.
Too well orchestrated, right? I mean, it's just crazy, and just gets crazier.
But I had no idea, and I thought, well, and it is what it is. So I went back to work, and it was within 2 weeks of that injury that is when things started to change. And at that point, I started having this insatiable desire to hear piano music, which was a big departure for me. I grew up as a kid of the 60s. There was rock and roll, and there really wasn't much else. And
all right, so he has interest in basically classic rock music.
And so I didn't have any piano music. And when I was 7 years old, my mother had forced me to take piano lessons.
Now, isn't that interesting? Mom forced him to take piano lessons at the age of 7. Fast forward however many years, and he has an NDE, and...
which I dutifully did, and at the end of that year, I said, thank you, but it's not for me.
Not interested.
And so I stopped
as a child
having anything to do with it. And I went on with just my life as a kid and not interested in music. So all of a sudden, I've got this interest to hear classical piano music, and it was pretty strange. But it was so strong that I actually drove to Albany because nobody around here had that kind of music.
So the urge to learn piano, kind of find out this inner calling to play piano, is so strong that he decides to go to Albany and go distances to pursue this.
And so I bought a CD of favorite Chopin by Vladimir Ashkenazy, who at that time was just a famous Russian pianist, and he's now head of the Czech Philharmonic as a conductor. But he had this collection of Chopin music, and I was absolutely smitten with it. I listened to it all day long, all night long, made my friends listen to it, made them listen to it at work. I think they hated it. But, to me, it just wasn't anything better.
Right.
And within a period of weeks after that, I just wanted to be able to learn how to play. But I specifically wanted to learn how to play that stuff. But I didn't have a piano, and I didn't know how. So it was, it was kind of an interesting thought. But after I had that thought the next day, one of my babysitters came over and said, geez, I have this old piano that I want to keep, but I'm moving. Can I keep it in your house for a year?
How convenient. How convenient.
And I thought, hello, okay. But at the time, it just seemed like, oh, this is great. Now I have a piano.
Amazing.
And so I started to try to teach myself. I bought some books on how to learn. And I also bought the sheet music of all the music that was on the CD. And that was absolutely in Greek. I couldn't understand a word of it or a note of it. So I started trying to teach myself. And I would work I got up at 4, and I would work at the piano till 6:30, and then I would go to work, and I would come home at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I would spend time with my kids. It was my job to give them their baths at night and put them to bed. And it was kind of one of my treasured moments. And then, unfortunately, I would go right back to the piano, and I would stay there until 12, 1 o'clock, till I couldn't even see straight.
See the dedication that's going on here? I mean, it's just, he is completely driven to play the piano.
So that didn't bode well for my marriage, as you might imagine. But I was absolutely possessed and upset.
Hear that? His words, not mine. His words. I was absolutely possessed.
But I was absolutely possessed. But I was absolutely possessed and obsessed. And I thought that the music was the only reason that I was still here.
And you still think that?
No, I think that it's an important part of why I'm here. But I think that there's more than just the music. I think that the music has something to do with what I do. And I think that at some point, at least my intuition is that I'm supposed to put the two things together. And I've done some research about organ frequencies, and the human body resonates at a certain frequency. The individual organs they vibrate at certain frequencies, and are we able to manipulate those frequencies through music to heal them?
Okay, now this is what he's talking about is certainly not something new. And my opinion, his piano playing is beautiful. It's great. Actually, some of it's a little like Count Dracula, entering the haunted castle or some shit. But you'll see what I'm talking about when you go and listen to his music on your own. But I think he would be of more service to humanity if he went down the road he was talking about right there, concentrating on that. He's got a medical background. This type of information is hidden to the public on frequency healing and things of that nature. And Tony, if you're listening, I would encourage you to please dedicate more time in that field, brother, because you can help a lot more people that way. But I don't know how the medical establishment would take all that. So this type, when doctors go down this road, it's dicey, and has the potential to someone can lose their license. Yeah, a great point, Master J. Yep, cymatics. Yep, absolutely.
So that's something that I'm looking at, but so then I have 3 months into this story with the lightning. I wake up in the middle of the night after I have this dream, and in the dream I'm playing music in a concert hall, and the dream was like an out of body experience as well, because I was standing right behind me and I'm watching me play. And I was playing music that I'd never heard before, and the realization came to me that this music is not somebody else's music, this is mine. And so I started to listen intently to it, and it had a loud ending, and it woke me up out of a sound sleep, and I sat up and I came out to that piano, and I started to plunk out individual notes, but I didn't know how to play and I didn't know how to write. So it was, initially it was just an interesting, wow, that was quite a dream. But then the next day when I sat down at the piano to start to teach myself, the music from the dream would start playing. And whenever I sat down at the piano, it would start to play. And it would play on the way to work. Sometimes it would play when I was trying to do other things. And it was a lot like a small child. If I paid attention to it regularly, it would not be too intrusive. But if I didn't, it would start playing when I didn't want it to, when I was trying to concentrate on other things.
Okay, I'm going to rewind that part because I cannot tell you how much that lines up with intention work, consciousness, exploration, okay, things like that. It's to the T. The things when you throw intention into something, when you're trying to manifest something to an extent. Of course, manifesting has been way overblown inside of the New Cage arena, okay? But the point is it does work to an extent. And when you throw your intention into something with the intended desire to manifest something, the time you just start letting things flow and just forget about it, it's thrown out into the ether, that's when it comes and smacks you upside the face and shows itself. It's almost like you're in the zone, but it's in the zone out in the ether, and then it whoosh, comes in and then just again smacks you upside the head and says, "Hey, here I am." So I'm just going to rewind that part because it's a really important part.
If I paid attention to it regularly, trying to do other things, and it was a lot like a small child. If I paid attention to it regularly, it would not be too intrusive. But if I didn't, it would start playing when I didn't want it to, when I was trying to concentrate on other things.
Yep. So it's classic right there. Textbook example.
Wow.
And so this went on for a long period of time as the entire piece of music would play. It would start out at playing different points, but eventually it played through the whole thing, and I would write down ideas of what the music was, because I didn't know how to write music, but I could write down, without actual note values, I could write down what the melody was. And so that's what I did, and I tried to teach myself for several years, and I finally came to the realization that I couldn't do that, and I got a teacher in 1998. And so we started working together 2 hours a week, which we've done ever since then. And when we first started, the only time we had in common was at 5 o'clock in the morning. Which I felt sorry for her family, but they seemed to understand.
Yeah.
And so we would meet at 5 in the morning for a couple of hours every week, and we still do.
Wow.
We don't do it at 5 o'clock now, we do it at 6.
Civilized.
So we've gotten old. But in the course of learning to play, she has helped me to to hear what it is that I'm hearing musically, and to be able to write it down.
Translation.
And so we've been working on that, and she's helped me with it. And I went through a period of years of just learning how to play, and with the thought being, I need to learn how to play the music that I've been hearing, and I would like to learn how to play some other things.
The music that I've been hearing. These are transmissions to him, and he openly admits that. But I find it interesting that earlier on he used the word possession, and you're gonna see a backtrack of that, and it's gonna be flipped. Wait till you see. It's interesting to compare and contrast. compare and contrast things as the testimony goes through.
But it always seemed that that music was kind of the center focus for everything. And I started going to a piano camp in Vermont called the Sonata Adult Piano Camp in Bennington in 2002. And which was really it's a wonderful experience. You go for a week, and everybody there is there because they love to play. And it's an old convent, and there's a piano in every room and every closet. The only rooms that don't have pianos are the bathrooms. So it's pretty neat.
Sounds like a cool place, right? Talk about a great camp or place to get together with people if you're loving piano. Sounds like a really cool setup over there.
Kind of a place. And so that helped me to start to mature a little bit with playing. And things really took a different turn again in 2006 when I went to that camp in May and met the owner's sister, who was a concert pianist and was had been the #1 salesperson at Steinway for 10 years. She had recently switched to Bosendorfer, and she had 4 or 5 of her pianos there at music camp for people to play. And we got talking about the whole lightning experience, and because I was playing things that should have been way above my level. And so it was a bit of a curiosity to people that, how come you can play this? You've only been playing for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and this stuff, we've been playing this stuff all our lives, and you're playing it at that level.
And remember, he learned. His mother gave him lessons, or forced him to take piano lessons at the age of 7, I think he said. And wasn't interested after, the first year, something along those lines. So he goes throughout the rest of his childhood, on into his being an adult, becomes a doctor, and comes and learns piano learns piano after his near-death experience. In a very short time, he becomes incredibly gifted at piano, which is very rare. A lot of people might know this, but for those that don't, learning an instrument when you're an adult is a lot harder than when you learn it as a child. Musicians become much better at their craft when they are learning it as a child. So just wanted to throw that out there. So in this short amount of time, he's managed to impress a bunch of people with his abilities on the piano. Okay, let's continue.
And so, the story of getting struck by lightning and seemed to have some allure to people because, it was a common joke. People wanted to go out with an umbrella and stand in the lightning storm because I want to play like that. But in 2006, when I met Erica van der Linden-Feidner, who was the lady who was the Bosendorfer representative, she had gone home. At that time, she lived in Connecticut, and she had a friend who was a psychologist, and she was talking about this guy out in upstate New York that had been hit by lightning and had this insatiable desire to play piano, and it was a curious story for them. But the psychologist said, geez, Oliver Sacks is writing a book about people that have had weird experiences like that. And the psychologist told her, you should call Sacks's office. So she did. And that was in May of 2006. And in August of 2006, Oliver Sacks's office calls me on my phone and says, I hear you have an interesting story. Would you come down to New York and spend a day talking about it? And I thought, sure, why not? How many times do you get a call from somebody famous like that?
Yeah, that's it.
And so I went down in August and I spent the day with him, and he's an incredible man. He has a photographic memory.
Really?
Yeah. And absolutely incredible. And I remember we were talking about something, and he started to quote a book, and he jumped up and ran to the closet, and he starts throwing these books out of the way, and he finally reaches this book, and he opens it right to the page, and he hands it to me. And it is word for word what he just said.
Amazing.
And I'm like, oh my God.
So, interesting to hear that perspective of sorry, I don't remember the name of the musician, but not surprising, right? I mean, we hear about photographic memory and how it can really propel one's life and retainment for or is that even a word, for retaining information. And being able to, just boom, like this guy did. He just plowed through the bookcase and boom, found it right away and showed it to him. And I would think that a lot of musicians who are extremely skilled probably have that ability because they're reading the music, they're constantly looking at like their guitar or the piano keys or the drums in a certain thing, and they're totally entrenched in the experience. And so just thought I'd throw it out there. Sorry, a little rambly on that.
And so at that point I realized this is not a regular sort of guy.
Yeah.
And so I spent a wonderful day with him talking, and then at the end of it, he left me with some wisdom that changed my life again. And that was, he looked at me and he said, that piece of music from the dream went through an awful lot of trouble to get here. The least you can do is write it.
I love that quote.
And he just, and that was the last thing he said to me.
Hear that one more time.
And the least you looked at me and he said, that piece of music from the dream went through an awful lot of trouble to get here. The least you can do is write it.
Okay, and I also wanted to add, I was going to talk about this later, but I think it's the proper time to bring it up, is in the movie Soul with Joe, what happens when he just goes with the flow and he enters the nightclub playing the piano, and what do they call it? They call it in the zone. He's out in the ether bringing the music down to us, or down to him. Sorry, the dog's barking, but you get the point.
I love that quote.
And he just, and that was the last thing he said to me. And it was such a ground shaking thought for me. I went home and at night I spent every hour that I had that I wasn't working or wasn't doing something with the kids. I spent working on that music, and I did that for about 7 or 8 months. And then in 2007, in my piano camp, I played for them the first version of it. It was kind of in a rough draft, and it was pretty neat. And while I was there at the camp, Oliver called me and said, "I just wanted your permission to use your story in my book." And I thought, okay. I mean, I didn't think there was anything in it that was earth-shattering. And he said, and oh, by the way, also, it's going to be in the New Yorker in the July issue.
Boom, boom. How convenient. All of a sudden he's getting high-profile press.
I said, what is? He said, well, the whole first chapter, and that's you. And I thought, okay, well, this might be a little different. And so that happened. And then right after the New Yorker came out, Carlton Clay from the State University here in Oneonta, who was one of the professors of music there, called me and said, I would like to have you come teach a course or to talk about your experience in music composition. And I said, sure, I'd do that. And then Oliver's book came out in October of 07. And I remember going to the opening of it, which was really, I had been invited to go, which was really an honor. And right after that, Carlton called me up and said, I'd like to change things a little bit, and I want to change the venue. And he asked me if I would give a concert instead of teaching a class. And I thought, well, that's going some. I've never done anything like that, and I don't even know where to start. And he said, well, it'll be okay, whatever I'm sure you can do it. And so I agreed to do it, and the date that he had available was January of 2008, January 29th. So January 29th, as it turns out, was my birthday.
His birthday is the day that was picked for him to play his show.
And I thought, okay, this is too weird. I'm going to have a rebirth into the music world. And
interesting that he uses that word, right? He's having a rebirth. I think he's spot on, because his whole life has changed since getting struck by lightning.
And this whole thing is happening.
As do most people with NDEs, or almost every single one of them.
And as I started in the process of preparing for this, he would call me and say, well, there's been a slight change. And he said, the BBC found out about it and they're going to be here. And then 2 days later he called again, well, Granada Media found out about it and they're going to be here. And then German television found out about it. I was like, how in the world are these people finding out? I said, I don't know anybody there.
Yeah.
And
it's almost as if it was all planned. How about that? He has this near-death experience, turns into a piano prodigy, is composing music, and he's getting national press attention, worldwide press attention, which, not saying he doesn't deserve it, but it just shows how all of this was planned out from the get-go.
And he says, well, I told them they could come. He said, "Did you really?" And he says, "Yeah, it'll be fine." I love that line. He always says that to me. It'll be fine. And at that point, I hadn't memorized the music. I mean, this is 3 pieces of music. The Lightning Sonata is in 3 movements, and it's a 20-minute piece of piano music. There were 2 smaller pieces, but there's still essentially 40 minutes worth of music that I had written, but really it hadn't been polished, hadn't been memorized, and so I had to start that whole process. My piano teacher, Sandy McCain, we came up with a strategy, and she said, "I'll give you until the end of December to have it memorized." And so she started working with me 2 hours a day in the beginning of December. And I was working on memorizing all of that, and then I ran into a problem. I had what's called a ganglion cyst. It's a fluid-filled sac that forms usually in places like your wrist. And I had the unfortunate pleasure of having one form in my spine. So suddenly in the middle of December, I was having horrible leg pain. I couldn't walk, I couldn't sit, I couldn't work. I was okay on Sunday, but Monday I was absolutely on the sidelines. And I called my friend who was a neurosurgeon, and I said, "I'm in big trouble here."
Yeah.
And I said, "Can you help me out?" And he said, "Come on over." And that was on a Wednesday, and Tuesday night I had an MRI. Wednesday I was in his office, and Friday I was in surgery.
Wow.
So this is now the 3rd week of December. I've got a concert in 6 weeks, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
Unbelievable.
And as it turns out, having to have surgery gave me the time to do all those things. Had that not happened, I never would have been able to have time to memorize the music or to practice to the 5 or 6 hours a day that I needed to practice. And so, the day, 2 days after surgery, I was back at the piano.
I mean, it's got to add this. I mean, how convenient that, this, I'm kind of reaching with this one, but given everything you've heard, come on, just consider this. The Matrix delivers a health issue that gives him the time that he needs to be able to perform. Just saying.
And, and of course I didn't tell anyone I did that, but, and he wouldn't have been real happy with me. But,
he knows now.
Yeah. And so I just started, and because of that, I had the time to memorize all the music and to prepare for it. And so it worked out to my benefit. And Sandy worked with me just an unbelievable amount of hours to prepare for it. And on January 29th, it was they sold out. Actually, they told me that they had 2,000 requests for tickets.
Wow.
And so they wound up having 2 concerts on the 29th and on the 3rd of February.
Congratulations.
And,
That's amazing.
and so I had 3 television crews and 2 sellout crowds, and it was a wonderful experience because I was, the way I would do it is I would talk to the audience just to say who I am, how I got here. I would talk about the individual pieces of music and what they each meant. And then I would play them, and then I told the whole story about the lightning and you know, my adventure into a realm that nobody understands. And then I opened it up for questions. And it was incredible because people are genuinely interested and want to know what else there is. Because, I mean, most of us have come to a point in our lives where we realize, you know what? If this is all there is, it's not worth being here.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't even imagine if this was all that there was. Oh, a nightmare. But, you know, a lot of people do feel that way. They think it's some bullshit cosmic mistake, you know, that planets crash and into each other, and all. It's so ridiculous, the narrative that's been spun about why we're here in the science department, at least.
And that was the thing that kept coming up over and over again. And afterwards, people would come up, and very sheepishly, they'd kind of lean over and they'd say, "This happened to me, but I can't tell anybody."
Now, see, like, this is another problem, especially in the West, where people have these experiences, and it is disgusting that people will have these experiences and be shunned or discounted or talked down upon or called crazy for having these experiences and wanting to talk about it. These things that happen with near-death experiences in these people, they are, you know, life shattering experiences that should be shared with everybody as long as the person wants to. They shouldn't feel bad about sharing. And so, you know, him hearing people come up to him and say that they had them, but, you know, they can't talk about it. It's horrible. Horrible. Those poor people. And, you know, and you know what? I point my finger at religion and science mostly for that bullshit, because it's just wrong what's happening in that, because we would make so much more progress. You know, granted, we have tons of information on this stuff, but we would make so much more progress if people felt comfortable in sharing experiences that are not otherwise normal.
And it's surprising. Every time I've done a show like this, I've had 3 or 4 people come up to me afterwards and write their name on a little piece of paper or the email address. They want to talk to somebody. They've had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, and they don't feel like they can talk about it because everybody looks at them like they're a little wacky.
Right.
And the truth be known, I didn't tell anybody about it for the same reason.
Right.
And especially in my business, I mean,
Doctor, yeah.
You know, it's like I can just see the state coming and say, you know, we're taking your license, buddy, because you're a little loose around the edges.
See what I mean? This is the society that has been built up around us. It's appalling. It's disgusting. This guy's worried about losing his license because he had this huge transformative experience. All these people are coming up to him telling me I had these experiences, but I can't talk about it. This is where we're at. We're lucky we have what we have. And we got a lot. Let's just be honest. We do. It's just wrong for the person who's experienced it to feel this way. Sorry, I know I'm kind of on a tangent, but it's just the way I feel.
And had Oliver Sacks not told his story, I think the outcome would have been different. But this is somebody who is the consummate scientist and clinical investigator who also has a great gift to write and is well respected. And for him to come out and tell this story is changes it entirely, because it's credible.
That's right.
And even though I was a scientist and I've been in medicine all of my life, it still would have been hard for me to come out and say these things without the endorsement of somebody like that.
Absolutely.
This is the last segment.
And from doing those concerts, where are you now? You're publishing your sonata, is that right?
I've just done the final revisions on 3 pieces of music, and I'm going to publish that. I've got a number of other pieces that I'm working on.
Wow.
The music, and it's interesting because one of the questions that is frequently asked of me is, where does the music come from? And I've read as many things as I can get my hands on about other composers. And it's interesting because Brahms, Beethoven, Mozart, all of the big composers and a lot of the little composers all have the same take on where the music comes from. There is some place in the ether or in the collective consciousness of everything, or it comes from God, or it comes from some place. And what I have found is that I can tune into a frequency where the music exists. And I have no idea where it is or how it happens, but it's a very common experience for me, and it's similar to what Brahms describes as getting to a place mentally where you can connect. And it requires that you don't have something else going on at the moment, that there's no interruptions, and that you reach this kind of alpha state, I suppose, of meditation at the piano. And I find that if I just sit down and I start to doodle on the piano, all of a sudden I'm off and running.
It clicks in.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes with huge pieces of music. And for an example, I'm working on a piano concerto with orchestra right now. And I don't have the faintest idea how to orchestrate, but it doesn't matter because I can hear them. And so the piano music comes as big blocks. It doesn't come note at a time. And so I've got, it's a 3-movement piece, and I'm working on that. And then one of my assignments was a Brahms variation on a Schumann theme that Sandy had given me one day. And so I was sitting down and I was starting to work on it. I got through the 3rd measure, and suddenly I wasn't hearing it in piano. And it had changed to an orchestra. And I'm thinking, this is too weird. I'm hearing an orchestra as I'm playing. And then I stopped playing, and the orchestra kept going. And so I'm sitting at the piano, and it felt like somebody had just downloaded an entire file into my head.
Unbelievable.
There you go. Downloaded an entire file into my head. And yeah, Desert Rat saying he's describing automatic writing, but on a keyboard or piano. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's this information isn't anything new either. I mean, musicians talk about this all the time. I don't know where the music came from. I don't know where the song came from. I don't know where where it came from. It's almost as if I didn't write it. It's weird, phrases like that. So it's very, very common to see this, especially with someone who's, like musicians, even actors. They talk about how they transformed into the role. They lived the role. They even when they weren't filming, they would get into the character and stay in character from the beginning of filming all the way to the end, and dress like the character, entrench themselves into the character they are portraying. Let's see, what else was there? Oh, inventors are another one too, where inventors dreamt or were given plans on how to invent something. That's another one. I mean, so you have all this stuff going on, and it's all linked. It's all very, very similar. It's just customized for the person, depending on what area they're in or what area they're guided into.
And so now it's sitting there, and I have started to write a symphony.
What a gift.
You know, based on what I was just given. So, I mean, the music seems to come, and it comes from someplace, and it's a gift, and I'm very humbled by it, and I try very hard to be very true to exactly what I'm given, and I don't want to edit it. I don't want to tamper with it, because it comes from someplace that's very sacred.
What an amazing gift. We're going to ask for you to play for the TV show today, if that's all right. But I do have one more thing. Do you have a message, like when I ask you this out of the blue, that you would share with people, whether it's for people that have had near-death experience or anything that comes to you right now, an intuitive message that you want to send out to the world?
Okay. Now, wait to hear this. You're not going to be surprised. I've heard this many times. I'm sure a number of you have heard this many times. What he's about to say is, I mean, it's just, you'll see. Okay, let's just go.
Sure. Know that the consciousness, who we are, is something that goes with us always. When you pass from this life, you continue on. You know, does that mean there's reincarnation? I don't know what it means, but I do know that when I left my body, I continued to be exactly who I was. And that has to be for a reason. And my thinking is that our souls, our spirits go through an evolution, through growth, and that we go through the earth plane, and this is our proving ground. This is where we learn to grow spiritually.
Yeah, so, again, we have the typical learning experience, and then he really lays it down, and right where, all of us have heard this before.
And the whole idea is we came from one source, and we want to become one with that source again.
Here comes the guilt.
But we have to prove that we're worthy to be there. And we have to evolve to a point where we are accepted back. And I think that part of the message is the consciousness survives death. And the other part of the message is we are all energy. We are energy beings.
That's true.
We're not just flesh and blood. That's the smallest part of us. And because of that, there's so much more that we can do that we don't have any comprehension of.
I mean, it's just, this is par for the course, right? I mean, we've seen this time and time again. A lot of us probably have even, I know I have, I've grown up with that guilt, sin, judgment, you're not worthy type of mentality that has been pushed on from generation to generation, by these outside forces to make you feel like shit. Okay? This guy, he seems like a great guy. I even put that in notes. Someone saying, I'm calling him an idiot. I'm not calling him an idiot. I don't have to agree with everything he says. I think he's a good guy. He's just misguided. That's all. Almost the whole freaking realm is misguided, right? I mean, we see that. It's blatantly obvious that very few make it out of here because it is Stockholm Syndrome on steroids. It's the acceptance of the insane.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just rewind. We're at the end of this here. I'm just going to rewind what he's saying on this because I think it's just it's there, to, again, it puts the guilt and the shame on the people. If we were here to learn and grow from this experience, we wouldn't be reincarnated and memory wiped. We wouldn't have the veil of forgetfulness constantly, lifetime after lifetime, taking its way with us. Okay? We're being manipulated. A lot of people don't like it. Okay? I don't like it. The point is some can get to the point where, yes, there's like this stages of grief phase that goes on. And no matter what, you're still not going to ever be happy with it. It sucks. But the overarching theme is sovereignty and liberation, knowing that you can get the hell out of here when your time comes. So take solace in that. Enjoy whatever time you have left, okay? Don't, if you find yourself getting overwhelmed with this material, take a break. It's always going to be there, okay? The information's always going to be there. You can come back to it after you've taken time to care for yourself. Because as hard as this is to stomach, we all still are in these bodies, okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Music seems to come, and it comes from someplace, and it's a gift, and I'm very humbled by it, and I try very hard to be very true to exactly what I'm given, and I don't want to edit it. I don't want to tamper with it because it comes from someplace that's very sacred.
What an amazing gift. We're going to ask for you to play for the TV show today, if that's all right. But I do have one more thing. Do you have a message, like when I ask you this out of the blue, that you would share with people, whether it's for people that have had near-death experience or anything that comes to you right now, an intuitive message that you want to send out to the world?
Sure. Know that the consciousness, who we are, is something that goes with us always. When you pass from this life, you continue on. Does that mean there's reincarnation? I don't know what it means, but I do know that when I left my body, I continued to be exactly who I was. And that has to be for a reason. And my thinking is that our souls, our spirits go through an evolution, through growth, and that we go through the earth plane, and this is our proving ground. This is where we learn to grow spiritually. And the whole idea is we came from one source, and we want to become one with that source again, but we have to prove that we're worthy to be there, and we have to evolve to a point where we are accepted back. And I think that part of the message is the consciousness survives death. And And the other part of the message is we are all energy. We are energy beings. We're not just flesh and blood. That's the smallest part of us. And because of that, there's so much more that we can do that we don't have any comprehension of.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to wrap up the near-death experience. So I'll probably stick around for about 10 minutes. We can have maybe 10-15 minutes. We can have a short chat. So if anyone has any questions, any comments they want shared on the video for others who come across it, feel free to pop it up. In the meantime, I'll just scroll up and take a look at some of the things you guys have been saying. There is a poll up there, so anyone who wants to vote on the poll, I'll leave that up until the end of the stream. So far we have, the question was, do you think Tony's experience was targeted purposely? Yes, no, or maybe? To me, it seems obvious, but I'm just curious what the consensus is for those who are listening. So let's see. Loophole, Steelic. I didn't know that was your other name. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Okay. Yeah, Locker says, Led Zeppelin said their Stairway to Heaven track came to them straight from the devil. The shit Led Zeppelin was involved with is crazy. Who was it? Jimmy Page, I think, is the one who owned Crowley's house. Bought Crowley's house after. Or from somebody, and then it conveniently burned down years later, and all sorts of crazy stuff talked about with that. Oh, Steelic, I didn't know Destroyer got his last strike. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, he was always pushing the edge, but I'm sure he'll make another backup. We've always got to have backups just in case. Yes, Desert Rat. Boom, brother, right there. The point of no emotion is the doorway out. Yep, that was shown very clearly in this, that Tony had a moment where it, in my opinion, that he was in his true essence until an outside force came and messed with him and initiated emotion of love, and then everything unfolded from there, obviously. Mark Garcia says, the veil of forgetfulness, we call that the sombrero of separation. Okay. It's a good one. Loophole says, now they want mass emotional despair. Bo Jiden. Yeah. Desert Rat says, and the link from the west originated in the east. Yep. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Desert Rat first says, the west hasn't done anything the east hasn't done, and the link from the west originated in the east. Yep, I agree. It's just, even though most of the world is screwed up, I mean, there's still, you know, sections of the world where you are, you know, you can share something like a near-death experience or paranormal encounter and won't be called crazy, or just worry about fear of being judged or, you know, ridiculed. But that's where we're at. Hey, Max. Hope you're well. Welcome. Yeah, we're almost towards the end here. Just doing a brief chat and then we'll wrap things up. But yeah, so what did you guys think about this near-death experience? Really interesting, huh? It just um, really opens up uh, the can of worms on a lot of things. I mean, you've got so many different things going on, and I think it's one of the better examples I've run across that shows most importantly um, that moment which Tony had where he seemed to be in his true essence. I know I keep repeating myself, but I think it's very clear that once the interference came in, the blue light or the blue energy ball enveloped him, that's when everything started to go and lead to where he is today. It's an amazing story. You know, some of the words he used, things like possession, um, attributing the music to the ether, and then at the same time backtracking. Really, really diverse near-death experience. FYM says, let's say we love animals. Is that a bad emotion? Of course not. I love my dog. Nothing, you guys still, we're here. We gotta love our friends, family, pets, whoever's in your life that you love. No, you shouldn't ever be taking that away from yourself while you're here. It's once you are approaching death, and at the time of death is when you really need to work on that. I mean, you should be, in some sense, just pepping yourself up from time to time to be ready for when that time comes. That's all. But no, you absolutely, come on, you gotta enjoy yourself while you're here. You can't, love is one of the best human emotions, one of the best human traits that we have, right? I mean, love is a good thing when you're here, but when you leave here, it's used against us. It's pinned against us and exploited. And basically given as a transmission to lure you back in to coming back down here. Abdi says, the fact they hide information from us is enough to tell us we are very special beings. Yeah, and the fact that they need to jump through like so much hoops to just continually, get in our way and steal our sovereignty from us is, no more of that bullshit, right? But they put in a lot of effort because I'll say this again, that everything boils down to consent, guys. That's the key. That is the key to the kingdom, to the sovereignty kingdom, is consent, because they have nothing without consent and fuckery, okay? Illusions, okay? Being messed with, all right? That's all they got. That's it. They have nothing else going for them but illusions and trying to get you to give consent in deceptive manners. It's pathetic when you really think about how simple it is. But it works, right? It works. It works. Loophole says, do you think the injector is to condense the soul? Well, there's some suggestion, take this with a grain of salt, but there's a really interesting quote from Rudolf Steiner. So if you look up a Steiner quote, it talks about how when these things would be introduced into society, now mind you, he said this in, I don't know, I think early 1900s sometime. And he mentioned how when these are introduced, they will in fact lessen or borderline eliminate your connection to your true essence, your spirit. In case it's your soul, however you wish to look at it, even though there is a difference, but point is he was spot on with that. Oh, chat disconnect. Still live here. That's weird. Okay. Lone Traveler, you're welcome. You're welcome. Says thanks so much. Another great stream. Abdi says, I've read about a case of soul separation. I read on Reddit. I'm avoiding it. I'd like to see a link to that sometime. There was a really interesting, sorry for the ums. There was a really interesting case I read about a near-death experience. I think it was in India, and this girl, I think she was about the age of 9 or something, has a near-death experience and comes back as a totally different person, able to speak a different language, doesn't convey the same traits and or not traits, but personality type that she had prior to the near-death experience. Really, really interesting case. I may actually do a video on that one in the future. And blew the family member away. And the other thing that was crazy is that when she came out of it, she was talking about how she didn't have the right family members. That's what she said. She was like, "You're not my mother or you're my father. My is boo 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 is who whoever the person was." And the family went to go find this other family. And the kid now spends time at both families. It's one of the craziest experiences I ever read. So yeah, it goes to, the soul separation and almost, possession of the body by another soul. Crazy. Okay, looks like the chat's kind of messing up, but I think it's back. Yeah, love without attachment. Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah. FYM says, just to clarify for anyone who's not reading the chat on the replay, it says, so love without attachment, you mean if I get it well. Let's see. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think attachment is just, it needs to be worked on. That's all. You have your love, you enjoyed your time here, but I'd suggest that love and anger, whatever, hatred, happiness doesn't necessarily exist outside of here when we're in our true essence. You just are. Those emotions and things likely are strictly linked to this realm that we're in and the astral subrealms of control. Because it all seems to point that once the interference comes, that neutral just state of being flies out the window and everything changes. Yeah, consent and intent. Mark Garcia says, we must escape these pinata avatars of abuse and escape like the delicious treats from within. I like that. That's a good one. I like that one a lot. I'm going to have to save that one for later. Ann Pearson says, I'm sick of getting scraps from the king's table here. It's a good one, too. I hear you. Anne says, these dark souls among us should have been forbidden from incarnating here. Yeah. It's crazy. Okay. PB says, right, emotions are matrix. Yep. Part of the whole construct. I've tried to not really say that as much about the whole emotion thing and the love thing, but it has to be said. I think it's initially for someone who's just starting to look into this, it might be a big turnoff. And it's something that needs to be discussed, though. A lot of people don't like the idea of something like love not existing at all. You know, they want it to be true, that it's everything is love. And you know, you have to look at that and say, okay, well, obviously everything is not love. Okay, it's not. It's just clear, you can see in society that it's just not the case. But at the same time, love is great. But if you created a matrix, wouldn't it be great to implement something like love, like we experience, and use it as a tactic to, you know, control? It's in my opinion, it's something that is designated to this matrix and the astral subrealms, like we were talking about. So, but you know, for the people who might be new and just, you know, coming across this channel, you know, just put it aside. You know, concentrate on the other information if you are not comfortable with what I'm talking about when it comes to love, because you just got to keep an open mind to these things. FYM says, maybe when we are outside, it's not like emotions, but more like respect towards others, or something like that. I could see, yeah, I could see something like that. Yeah, it's just a mutual respect, that everyone is who they are, and things of that nature. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Max Milner says, reminds me of the quote, love is like a drug. Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically what's interpreted in near-death experiences, right, guys? Because you read them and they say it's the most amount of love I've ever felt, more powerful than any love I ever experienced while I was in a body. You know, and a lot of them will use the term, you know, it was euphoric, a euphoric rush of love, something along the lines of that. So it's clear that, yeah, love is like a drug. And if you're having a near-death experience or at the time of death, you allow that love bomb to get a hold of you, whoo-hoo, not good, not good. That needs to be eliminated at the time of death. There's no two ways about it. Gail says, I feel my emotions are frequently hijacked and feel like a prison. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, sister. Okay. Yeah, Abdi, we can talk about that another time. Thank you for the question, though. Yeah, I'll go over that too. I'm probably going to wrap this up here. Let's see. Locker says, I watched that NDE video. It was a good one. Cool. So, so you're talking about the one in India? That one? Yeah, that one is crazy. Crazy. I'll have to try and dig it up and share that one and do a commentary on it. It's wild. FYM says, love towards animals manifests to me more like a deep respect, I'd say. Not like love as depicted by most. Mar... Okay, BB says, well, people should start to reverse their priorities if they really want to get out of this. Love does not exist. Okay. Loophole, boom, right here. Yes, love, the bond to keeping us in this realm. Emotional blackmail. BB says it's only the other piece of the game. Yep. Yeah, one piece of many, but it's by far the most powerful. All right, so we're probably gonna just these last two comments. Master J says, after he was knocked out of his body and died, the so-called blue light came along for a quick reprogram and pulled him back into his body. Boom. Well said. Well said, Master J. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Oh, that's right. Prismatic Sovereign. I love this guy. Go check out Prismatic Sovereign's channel. He does some great music. And by the way, Prismatic, I left you a response and then I went back and was going to put something else, and I noticed the system got to it because the whole thing was deleted. So, yeah, I'll just give you my email right now, and anyone else who wants to shoot me an email, I'm not always the most quick to respond, but I try to get back to everybody when I can. Email address is foreverconsciousresearch@gmail.com. That's foreverconsciousresearch@gmail.com. I also wanted to add that, I spoke about this last video, that the Soul Watch Party is still on. I just don't know when I'm going to do it. It's probably going to be a few months. Just going to put that out there. I still have to, that was a bigger project than I expected. And the upcoming project on how to prove the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap to yourself is consuming almost all of my time right now. And will really break down as much as possible to help you prove it to yourself if you're new to the concept or otherwise still on the fence. I also wanted to put out there that I have an Odyssey channel where I will be doing streams over there that I couldn't do here. So feel free to check out the pinned link, invite link above, and join me over there. If you sign up and use that link, you'll get some free library crypto along with it, and it also helps promote my channel by signing up over there. So and it doesn't cost anything, and for anyone who's a content creator, it's a great place to back up all your videos because you can sync all of your YouTube videos over there instantly. And I also do have 2 YouTube backup channels which are in the description tab. So feel free to sub those. I won't bother you on those channels unless it's necessary. And we also have the Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming Discord group, which you can also find the link for in the description, where we have weekly meetings, weekly Zoom meetings, where we get together and talk about astral projection and lucid dreaming and our practices and some resources, successes, failures, things like that. And then there's also a soul trap section in there. There's a lot of good conversations. Occasionally we just do spur of the moment voice chats together where we just kind of get, talk about all sorts of things. But the Discord is mainly geared towards astral projection and lucid dreaming with a few other discussions that come up from time to time. So feel free to swing by. Okay, I'll just take a few more of these and then I gotta run, but let's see. Okay, Prismatic says, Scott, everything here seems to be impromptu, but always ends in energy extraction and re-imprisonments. Yep. Yep. Right on. Right on the spot there. Okay. Loophole says, keep love here and leave it here. Yes. I like that. That's a good one. Uh-oh. I lose connection? That looks all right. You guys seeing the video okay? Make sure. Okay, looks like it should be all right, but it was failing for a minute. Okay, that was weird. Do not consent. That's right. Do not consent. What time are we at? Oh, almost 2 hours. Over 2 hours. Okay, guys. Enemy says, FC, you need to see Sausage Party. It's basically about us being food items that believe the gods love us until they figure out the truth. The movie is far more encoded than soul. Yeah, no, that is a great one. That's definitely on my list to talk about as well. That's yeah, absolutely. I suggest everyone check Sausage Party out too. Yep. And the Monsters Inc. is another one. All sorts of stuff. Let's see. Well, all sorts of stuff, I'm going to say. What's the movie? The Albert Brooks film. I know Abdi remembers. I can't. Oh, Defending Your Life. Defending Your Life. I had a brain fart there for a minute. Check out Defending Your Life, too. That's another one. All right, brothers and sisters. It's been fun. Again, it would be great if you can join me on Odyssey, so feel free to check it out. Again, I have the Twitter as well, and we'll leave things there. It's been a pleasure as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for stopping by today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. I have a near-death experience interview that I did with a man who was in a coma for 11 days. That's going to be coming out soon. I just have one more interview to do with him just to finalize a few more questions that I have, and then that will be out. And then part 1 to the research guide for the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap will be coming soon as well. So much love, blessings, stay safe out there, and we'll see each other again soon. Thank you.